Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'm going to break down episodes 1 and 2 of Fargo Season 4. There were a lot of characters introduced in this fourth installment of the anthology series, a lot. We go way back in time to the 1950s and leave Minnesota behind to travel south to Kansas City, Missouri. There's a lot going on in the first two episodes, but the backdrop of the story seems to be the tensions between two rival gangs, the Cannon Limited and the Fadda Family. When you put their two names together, it sounds like cannon fodder, and that probably didn't happen by accident. Before I recap what happened, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't watched the first two episodes of Fargo Season 4 yet, this video won't be for you. Episode 1 is titled, Welcome to the Alternate Economy, and it starts out with a school report delivered by Ethelrida Pearl Smutny. In 20 plus minutes, we get a history lesson about organized crime in Kansas City and how power shifted over the 50 years since the Moskowitz Syndicate, a gang of Jewish immigrants, set up shop at the turn of the century. From there, the Irish Milligan Concern took over until the Italian Fadda Family moved in. Ethelrida tells us, here's the thing about America. The minute you're relaxed and fat enough, somebody hungrier is going to come along looking for a piece of your pie. And we see that even though the ruling families have a tradition of trading sons to be raised by their rivals in an attempt to keep the peace, it never really worked. The most interesting story folded into the conflict here is that of Rabbi Milligan. The youngest in the Irish family, he was sent to live with the Moskowitzes. Instead of keeping the peace, he helped his family get into the compound and take it by violent means. Years later, when the Italians arrived to make the same alliance with the Irish who are now in charge, Rabbi gets traded again. This time he decides to change sides and gives his adopted Fadda family the advantage. They then end up on top of the underworld where they remain until we enter the present day of Season 4. Ethelrida describes it like this: whoever was last off the boat, finding the doors of honest capital closed, rolled up their sleeves and got to work getting rich the old-fashioned way. Different groups of outsiders, or those that are considered the other, fighting over the scraps of whatever power they could get, knocking each other down all the way. The 16-year-old, who seems to be our sensible character in the middle of things, also lays out what sounds like the big question the season is concerned with. If America is a nation of immigrants, then how does one become American? At the end of her report, we see Loy Cannon, head of the Cannon Limited, enter into an alliance with Donatella Fadda, head of the Fadda family. Loy comes off as cool and calculated. In a meeting with a local bank where he pitches his new idea for a credit card, we see that he has big ideas. Good ideas destined to fall on deaf ears based on his being from the wrong race and class. He still has enough power that the Italians can't overlook him though, and so in following with the tradition, a new son exchange is agreed upon. His son Satchel will be raised by the Faddas, and he takes in 0. In true Fargo fashion, a somewhat random event turns things upside down. Donatello gets hit in the neck with a stray pellet from some kids who were playing with a BB gun. His family rushes him to the nearest hospital where the man in charge, Dr. Harvard, turns him away for being Italian and therefore not a respectable American. At the public hospital, he appears to be on the road to recovery until his son Josto has a conversation with a quirky nurse who he hit up for some drugs to pick him up after a stressful day. After their conversation, the nurse, Oretta Mayflower, takes it on herself to give Donatello a lethal dose of something. Oretta establishes herself as a wild card and brings with her the obligatory Minnesota accent. In other scenes, we see that both her drug use and her propensity to euthanize her patients are well-established parts of her character. She lives across the street from Smutny Funeral Home where she crosses paths with Ethelrida. For as much as we've seen her, Orietta's motivations are pretty much a mystery. It's possible she's just a psychopathic nurse that likes to kill her patients, but I'm guessing there's more to her story. Her taking out Donatello leaves Josto in charge, but we see his bug-eyed brother return from Italy to complicate things further. This could set up a power struggle inside the family, but in their moment of weakness, the Cannons make a move which diverts their attention. Before his death, Loy tried to get control of a slaughterhouse in his neighborhood from Donatello. He said no, but the Cannon Limited decided to act as if he said yes. Their number 2 in charge, Dr. Senator, takes over the business, and then Gaetano Fadda sweeps in to take it back. While this is going on, Josto has his hands full trying to get his murderous revenge on Dr. Harvard. His guys attempt a drive-by that fails when Harvard survives. That brings another new character, Detective Otis Weff, into the picture. He appears to have OCD, and we learn that he's on the Fadda payroll, which means he's going to have to come up with someone to frame to keep Josto's name out of it. They didn't hit their main target, but some people died, including a well-to-do donor, so someone's going to have to pay the price. A couple of other characters enter the picture after escaping from prison. Ethelrida's aunt, Zelmare Roulette, and her accomplice, Swanee Cap, who tells a story about attending white schools where they were mostly concerned with trying to rape the native out of her. These two end up hiding out at the funeral home. They said they came because they heard the family were in over their heads with a couple of leg breakers. The Smutnys are in debt to the Cannons, and from what we can tell, they don't have a plan to get on the right side of things yet. Swanee mentions bank robbery as a possible solution, but by episode's end, their freedom appears to be in question as U.S. Marshals show up on the doorstep. That's only part of the cliffhanger, though. Before they arrive, we see Oretta drop off a pie that's loaded with syrup of ipecac on their porch. This is after she offered Ethelrida a job cleaning her apartment and said that she wanted to make her one of her special projects. How that translates to a vomit-inducing pie delivery is yet to be seen, but I feel like these two, Ethelrida and Oretta, are the two most interesting characters in Season 4. They have a healthy amount of quirk, and there's potential for them to shine while navigating through some difficult circumstances and situations. That's kind of what makes Fargo work for me, and these two inhabit the spaces on the opposite end of the spectrum. The younger brings to mind a Molly Salverson or Gloria Burgle, and the older might be up the same alley as someone like Lorne Malvo or V.M. Varga. Things are changed up nicely in that Ethelrida isn't a cop, and that Oretta may be less predictable in what drives her than the other two villains I mentioned. It's easy to see that we're supposed to like Ethelrida for her calm demeanor, her smarts, and her relative purity compared to those around her. And even though Oretta is clearly chaotic, we can also put together that she's quick on her feet and able to get what she wants. She got caught trying to kill one of her patients and managed to secure 2 months severance with a letter of recommendation from her boss as he was firing her. So she's out there, but she isn't completely out of control. In a world where respect is currency, most of the characters go out of their way not to give it. There's a lot of punching down or punching sideways at the very least. The Fadda brothers are almost cartoonish in most of their interactions. There's some humor there, but it could all get old. Josto has plans to increase his power through a political marriage, but otherwise seems like your typical fail son. Gaetano presents as aggressive and unstable, but that could prove valuable in their family business. Even though the son exchange seems like a big part of the setup, the current kids caught up in it right now haven't really been focused on. They're young, and we don't really see much except for them listening to the older people around them. The fact that Rabbi Milligan is in charge of watching Satchel Cannon seems important. I think based on his role in the history of things, there's probably more to Rabbi's story, and he might be the connection to the other seasons of Fargo, as we know they're all connected, and we did meet a Milligan in Season 2 who happens to be black. Chris Rock's role is pretty restrained at this point. He's doing a fine job of keeping his cool and delivering a big line now and again. A couple that stood out in these episodes were him telling Donatello, "You think part of being American is standing on my neck?" And his comment about the world being dog eat dog. He says, "That's how dogs work. Men are more complicated." So he's delivered when he has a chance. I also like his right-hand man, Dr. Senator. He seems like a pretty strong character, and he's delivered some good lines as well. I thought the rats hanging up at the slaughterhouse to scare the others away was a funny bit, as was Dr. Senator's response to it, saying that he might be overestimating the brain power of his foe. There's quite a few Coen brothers references. A few that stood out right away to me were obviously the gangland angle. That brings Miller's Crossing to mind. I doubt many people missed the cattle gun in action at the slaughterhouse, but obviously that featured heavily in No Country for Old Men. In episode 2, we see it being used for its actual purpose. The prison break made me think of Raising Arizona. Of course, there was a lot less mud, but it definitely had the same kind of feel, as was the opening narration, which had a similar feel as well. I haven't had a chance to go back and really look, but I'm sure there's plenty more that I missed at this point. As I mentioned, there are a ton of characters. It was almost a little bit overwhelming, and it made it so that none of them really were driving the story. It'll be interesting to see where they go. I mean, obviously we're going to have a clash between the two families, but beyond that, we'll just have to wait and see because there's a lot going on. I'm interested to hear what you think, so let me know in the comments. Who do you think's going to eat the pie? What's going to happen when they do? Do you think the Faddas can keep Gaetano on the leash, or is there going to be a power struggle inside the family? What's going to happen with the fugitives when the marshals knock on the front door? And what do you think that Oretta's backstory is and her motivation will be going forward as the season progresses? With that, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.